Okay, good afternoon, and today we continue in this week's study in BWG of accountability. Pastor has started somewhat yesterday, and throughout this week we will take a quick journey through this whole area of accountability, what it is primarily, and then do we really need accountability? Who are we accountable to? What are we accountable for? Is it a blessing? Is it a burden? Or, to be very honest, something we want to enjoy, but we don't want to contribute towards. So I thought it is be prudent if we revisit. You might remember in the past I made a couple of references to Rick Warren's book, Purpose-Driven Life, and he has 3 chapters actually on the whole area of accountability, though he does not really use the word, but he emphasizes a lot on fellowship, counterfeit fellowship, real fellowship, true fellowship, and how it relates to, at the end of the day, this whole issue of accountability. So if we can, we will just share screen. We will start with Galatians. This was one of the 3 readings in today's BWJ. Galatians 6:1. Paul writing to the early church says, "Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted. Then carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ." So towards the last part of today's meditation, there's a reference to Pastor Bill Hull, who says accountability to the Great Commission is what tracks to a train is. So you see, with the railway track and the train is practically quite useless without a railway track. It will be derailed, it will have no direction, it cannot go on the way it is supposed to do. So the accountability are the rail tracks that will help us to achieve, to fulfill the Great Commission, which is the law of Christ. And what is that? To go make of all disciples. We will not be successful at all if we do not believe in accountability, if we do not believe in a fellowship of believers doing this together to achieve the Great Commission, that is to make disciples of all. And in that whole process of the discipleship journey, accountability will invariably come in. All right? So it's already mentioned in one of the days this week, we are accountable to one another, we're accountable for one another, and I think it will be discussed a little bit more later in the week. So in one of the chapters of Rick Warren's book, he mentions real fellowship breeds accountability. Without real fellowship, accountability can't really grow, can't really take off. You need to have a base, a home of real fellowship. And in real fellowship, what happens? People experience 4 things, Rick Warren says. One is authenticity, mutuality, sympathy, and mercy. So in real fellowship, and this is what we want, I think all of us, people will experience or experiencing authenticity, that means not counterfeit, mutuality, from the word mutual, for each other, sympathy, and mercy. All right, we will try to go in at length into each of the words that are so connected with real fellowship. So what is authenticity? Rather than to define, Rick Warren says authenticity is a situation in an area, is a feeling where people share their hurts. If you know of such a place, you would have to find it. If you do not know us, we will tell you. The DG, of course, and the church family, the koinonia, the fellowship of believers. Remember, that's why we started out with these two words, the ecclesia, the people who are called out, sanctified, and in the process continue to go back into the world, to be in the world. And when we do that, you will find that you need a home base where people are not afraid to share their hurts. Authenticity is a place where people reveal their feelings. We know that when we get to a level of interaction, the very basic level is when we don't really know each other. Hello, how are you? Without really wanting to know how the other person is feeling, we just say. But then as we go on to get to know each other better, we start telling our inner feelings, what we feel about something, what do we think, our opinions, and then you continue on to a third level to want to help others. When you reveal your feelings, you're not afraid to confess your failures. The sad part is many people think they do not have failures. It is all success story all the way. But that would not be an area where authenticity reigns. Authenticity is a place where people disclose their doubts. We do not know everything every time. And when we have doubts, we must not be afraid to say, I am not so sure. Sometimes we are afraid to disclose our doubts for fear, apart from looking not so smart to others. We are afraid of hurting other people when we doubt somebody's opinions or somebody's thoughts. So we must live in an area where we are not afraid to disclose our doubts and where we admit our fears. Sometimes, especially those who are holding leadership positions, this is quite difficult. You want to exude an air of confidence, that no problem, God is my captain, I do not fear anything, but we are imperfect. We are sinners, redeemed by grace, and we must not be afraid to admit our fears, whatever they are. But always we will know where to cast our fears, where to cast our anxiety. And to acknowledge, connected with the few points above, our weaknesses. It is so much a display of genuine humility and honesty when we acknowledge our weakness. It is not our carnal nature, it is all our nature to say, ayo, my weakness is this, my weakness is that. The only time probably we use that is, oh, my weakness is durians. But that's not actually what we want. We need to let this situation, this home base of authenticity grow, and you contribute towards that is when you willingly acknowledge your weaknesses. And when all has been said with genuineness, you reveal your feelings, you confess your failures, you disclose your doubts, you admit your fears, and you acknowledge, yes, you have your weaknesses. You are not afraid to ask for help. You are not afraid to ask for prayer. We notice sometimes within the DG group or other ministry groups that we are in, or accountability groups, we are initially very reluctant to ask for prayer. Straight away we jump and say, yeah, I'll pray for you, brother, sister. Yeah, I know what you're going through. But for ourselves, we hold back. We hold back. So here, Rick Warren is trying to say, where real fellowship is and where authenticity reigns, people are not afraid to ask for help and prayer. And authenticity is when people, these are the three famous phrases we have used more than once, have nothing to prove, nothing to hide, nothing to lose. How nice it is. And I know there are DGs where within the group, people have nothing to prove because they already know the truth and they have been set free. How frustrating and sometimes irritating, I must admit it. Within the group, in the discussion, there's always somebody who's out to prove his point. Authenticity is there's no need to do that. Or when somebody tries so hard to be somebody they are not, they wear a mask perpetually. But when we know our identity in Christ, when we want to enjoy real Christian fellowship, we have nothing to hide. And at the end of the day, when we fully understand hospitality, generosity, the spirit of salvation, we really have nothing to lose. And then you understand what stewardship is, you are ready to release to your brothers and sisters, because at the end of the day, we have nothing to lose. So authenticity is that place where people have nothing to prove, nothing to hide, nothing to lose. And this releases an atmosphere of honesty and humility. Easier said than done. But unless you have nothing to prove, nothing to hide, nothing to lose, it is very hard to be in an atmosphere of honesty and humility. And after authenticity, we have mutuality. Self-explanatory. It's a place where people practice the art of giving and receiving, where people build reciprocal relationships. It's a place where people share responsibilities. I think this is very important. Sometimes as good Christians, it becomes second nature to give, and that is a wonderful thing. But we lack the grace to receive when somebody wants to give us something or share something with us or bless us. The Chinese spirit comes out, no la, fine say. We have to develop that grace to also receive, so that you have a reciprocal relationship. And that responsibilities, you need not take it on yourself. You share your responsibilities. So thereby, it is important you have mutual accountability. Herein we have that word. Mutual encouragement, mutual serving, and mutual honoring, respecting one another, regardless of your station in life, regardless of the other person's station in life. There must be mutual accountability, mutual encouragement, serving each other, and honoring mutually. I think here it is important for us that always to remember it is a two-way traffic. More than often, we are so caught up in a one-way thing, whether it's outward or inward, but it has to be both ways. That's where mutuality is. And after authenticity, mutuality, it is sympathy. Real relationship is where there is sympathy. And sympathy is where people are not quick to give advice. When we are willing to share our doubts, share our difficulties, our hurts, sometimes the other person within that koinonia group, with good intention probably, straight away releases instant advice, instant fixes. We try to give a band-aid over every problem. But here Rick Warren cautions us, it is good to have sympathy, and one aspect of that is don't be too quick to give advice. Listen, empathize. Because sympathy is a place where people are there to enter in and share the pain of others. This is something quite difficult. Easy to release advice. Okay, I pray for you. I think you should do this, you'll be okay. You have not entered in, you have not taken that threshold step of sharing the pain of the others. And that sympathy is where people understand what you are going through. And sometimes this is important because we dare not enter in, and if you don't dare to enter in, if you don't dare to share, the pain, you will never be able to understand even a fraction of what the other person is going through. And this does not involve a lot of talking, a lot of releasing of advice. Sometimes it is just being there and listening. And with your body language, the person that is hurting will know you are there. And that leads us to the last point, is where people in times of deep crisis, in times of grief, in times of doubt, you know they are there for you. And sometimes that is enough to know that you are not alone. And that's where the real fellowship is. So authenticity, mutuality, sympathy. And sympathy meets the two fundamental human needs. These are not the tangible material needs, but the very fundamental human. Number one, the need to be understood. And for us, see that our number two, our feelings must be very, sometimes you have a lot of negative feelings and people don't really believe or subscribe to it. Our feelings, we know, it's not validated. You know, validating. You give your parking ticket, you show your boarding pass, it is being validated. It is seen as genuine and not counterfeit. It is seen as authentic. And people need to have their feelings validated. Understood, not so difficult, takes an effort, the need to be understood, but the need to have your feelings validated, that I think is a very fundamental need. And we need to understand that people need to have their feelings validated. Some words of assurance, the body language you show, the time you invest, this will help to create an atmosphere of sympathy in addition to authenticity and mutuality. Sympathy is when you are meeting two fundamental human needs. The need to be understood, the need to have your feelings, people's feelings validated. And finally, mercy. It's an atmosphere, it's a place where people are ready to offer a place of grace. It's a good term, a place of grace. We all know, grace is when you get something you don't deserve. This is where we, the koinonia, the fellowship, where real fellowship takes place, we show mercy and we offer a place of grace. Not so much also a physical place, but also a position whereby you are ready to release grace. And grace, one way of explaining is the second point, where people rub out your mistakes rather than rub them in. You know this eraser, which we call a rubber. Sometimes, you know, when we were younger in those days, when we use pencil or color pencils or other forms of writing instruments, we make a mistake, you don't have blanco, but you try to rub it out. And if you use the wrong type of eraser, you rub it in, the error goes even deeper until there's a hole in the paper. But mercy is a place where people rub out your mistakes. They are erased. There are no more sin. And they are ready to do that, even though you do not deserve it, because they are at a place of grace. And that's what we all want when accountability takes place in a place of real fellowship. So, mercy is also a place where people, needless to say, offer mercy to each other and are willing to receive mercy also. You remember we talked earlier in mutuality, we must have the grace to receive mercy, to receive understanding, to receive blessings too, even as we are willing to release it to others. So be the right type of eraser, the right type of rubber, that you erase people's mistakes rather than rub it in and thereby causing a big hole, a big rift. And Colossians 3:13, apart from many other scriptures, tells us to make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Why? Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. If not for anything, if there's no good reason you cannot think of, the Lord forgave you. Why should you not forgive others? So it starts, you know, through the early church, Paul writing, he says, you have to make allowance. There has to be an intentional effort to understand and to know that others, just as we ourselves, will make mistakes, will make errors, and be in conflict with you. And we must be ready, because we will be offended. And if you are offended, it's because of that lack of honesty, lack of humility within us. We get offended. But Paul says, no, we have to forgive. And that's where the station of mercy teaches us to release forgiveness, just as the Lord forgives us. So in the closing paragraphs of this chapter, Rick Warren tells us, and he sums it up, because we are imperfect, because we are sinful people, we are sure we inevitably will hurt each other when we are together for a long enough time. Over the years, 2-3 years easily, most DJs are together, and you are together week after week. Nowadays, whether be it virtually or in the early days, physically, you will inevitably rub each other the wrong way. Again, the term of rubbing, we will inevitably hurt each other. So sometimes when we hurt each other intentionally, but sometimes unintentionally, either way, the other person is hurt already, regardless of your motives, whether intentional or unintentional. When that person is hurt, it takes massive amounts of grace and mercy. What? To create and maintain fellowship, real fellowship. We hurt each other. That person is hurt, we are hurt. It's bound to happen. And what we need to recognize and to practice is we need to release, not 2 or 3 drops, massive, massive amounts of grace and mercy to create that fellowship which might be lost, which might be fractured, which might be whittled away, to create and to continue to maintain that real fellowship. Also remember, it is often that we need to be conscious. At the end of the day, massive, massive doses of grace and mercy to maintain that real relationship. So the psalmist says how good and pleasant it is when God's people and brothers and sisters live together in unity. And other versions say when God's people live together in harmony. That's what the real fellowship is all about. And we would like to end with this question. Rhetoric it may seem. Are you hungry to experience the authenticity, the mutuality, the sympathy, and the mercy of real fellowship? Because that's where accountability will grow and will take off and will be internalized in you. But it cannot just remain as head knowledge. We have to have this deep conviction, deep hunger. Yes, I want that real fellowship where there's authenticity, where there's mutuality, where there's sympathy, and where there's mercy. Either way, me releasing and me receiving, then I will be able to enjoy that koinonia which the Bible talks about. I don't know about you. I am hungry. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre, for sharing with us. Okay, I think you appreciate the amount of work done, and you bring across the whole area of accountability.